Hi, this is Janvi, and I'm at the beautiful Purple Valley in Goa. And today I'm in conversation with the amazing Neha Duseja. Neha has been teaching a retreat here for the monsoons at Purple Valley. And today we're just going to get to know Neha a little bit, try to understand where her journey into yoga began, what kind of personal transformations she had along the way, and how she's bringing all of that into her teaching practice today. And we also want to talk a little bit about her unique teaching approach, because from what I can see already, it's has this wonderful balance between like authenticity and playfulness, and this very intelligent approach to really just catering to each individual. So I'm really excited to dive into that with you, Neha.
Thank you.
Yeah. So maybe to begin with, I'd like to talk about something that we speak a lot about as yoga practitioners, which is this idea that there's generally a sense of, or an experience of suffering or dissatisfaction that leads a person onto the path of yoga. And like that's kind of the motivation to even embark on this like journey within, this feeling that there has to be something better out there. So my question for you is was that the case for you? And if so, like what was that like?
I came to yoga. I used to always be a fitness person growing up, just physically into sports and a runner and a swimmer. Never really got into yoga. It was only over the last decade or so. So I went through a kind of period, like a rock bottom period, as you said, a period of suffering. I used to be in advertising before I switched lanes. And I realized that I wasn't really happy with where I was and what I was doing. I didn't feel like I was doing anything that meant anything to the world. I felt like I was definitely missing a purpose. And I kind of initially found my purpose in the bottom of a vodka bottle. And, I think for me, I come from this background of addiction, and I obviously knew I wasn't doing good things for myself, but I feel like a lot of people can resonate to the fact that I knew that I wasn't in the right place for me, but I also didn't know how to get out. And I kind of hit rock bottom at a point where I was sitting across from a doctor who told me I had 6 months to live if I didn't give up what I was doing.
Wow.
And so I checked into an ashram and, cleaned out. But then as soon as I came back to my life and the environment that I had been in, everything went back to being the way it was. I relapsed multiple times. Again, went back to advertising because I didn't know how to do anything else. And then eventually just kind of walked out of an office, quit my job, went to Kenya for a couple of months and worked at an orphanage, teaching young girls how to paint and to make shapes with paper. And I think that was probably the most useful thing I ever did with my degree in graphic design. And then went back for like 3 years in a row, and even that felt more purposeful than what I was doing for a living. So my mom actually came to me with a discount coupon for Bikram yoga. It had gotten to a point where I wasn't really getting out of bed to do very much. And I'm really grateful for a family that, was there to stand by me when I was going through what I was going through in terms of rehabilitation. And my mom came up to me, she said, let's go for this yoga class. At that point, there were probably like maybe 2 or 3 yoga studios where I live in Dubai. And so we ended up going into a discount Bikram class. And I think I've heard, they say hot yoga is really good for people that are going through mental stuff. And I think, the yoga practice in that way was an amazing thing for me. I kind of stepped away from my addiction with alcohol and got completely addicted to the practice. And sometimes twice a day, getting on the mat, just sweating it out, processing things, The body was opening up, the mind was opening up. And 3 years later, I decided I had to go do a yoga teacher training because I wanted to share what I was going through, what I was feeling, the benefits that I was getting from the practice. There was magic happening. I just didn't know how to name it, what to call it, but I knew that I was shifting, my life was shifting, and I had to share it. So I went and did a yoga training at that point, and then just came straight back to advertising. Because I think at the age of 30, to change careers and to start brand new at the bottom rung of a ladder was really, really was scary, was very scary. So it took a little bit of a while for me to kind of make the switch. But when I realized I wasn't going to continue down an advertising path, I had to just commit to doing something more meaningful, something that resonated with me more. I remember somebody in Bali saying this to me once. He said, "Jump and the net will appear." So sometimes you just have to take the leap of faith. You really have to just believe that everything good is going to come out of the decisions that you make and just go for it. So yeah, so at the age of like 31 and a half, I kind of started teaching the classes that nobody else wanted to teach. You know, it's the 2 p.m. class, like who's going to come and do this class with me? That's where we all start, I guess.
Yeah.
But kind of building from there, working up from there, and I've, got an amazing community, surrounded by amazing people, met amazing people along the way. And I think teaching has been such a huge part of my healing as well. So yeah, I'm so glad. I've never worked harder, but I never looked back, and I never will go back.
Wonderful.
So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'd like to come back and talk a little more specifically about what it was in your yoga practice that helped you with the addiction. So I'm sure the craving doesn't go away overnight, or the habit patterns. And like you said, like every time you're in that environment, you might relapse. So obviously there's the whole support system, like you said. But what was it about the practice, like more specifically? Because you also mentioned like it was the heat of the Bikram yoga. So maybe you can tell me what it was.
I mean, I think along the path, I probably have picked up more tools to be able to explore what it is that triggers me to, to reach for something that I know is not the best decision. But I think, I know now, like I don't have the best stress response. I'm still working with that. So I think just understanding, I think what the practice starts to do is you start to have this really heightened sense of awareness of what is happening. When you're in a situation, it's not just about reacting anymore. It's about understanding the situation itself, understanding how you're in the situation, and coming up with a really educated response, right? And I think the practice starts to slow things down and starts to build that sense of awareness of what is happening around you, but then also what is happening inside of you. So you can see the patterns more clearly. You can see what's happening. You can see the reasons why you might want to choose to numb something out versus feel it. So, and then it becomes a choice, right? I'm not just blindly reaching for something that I know won't be good for me. I'm choosing to do it because I don't want to deal with it right now. Or maybe I now have meditation techniques that allow me to lean in and feel safe about leaning in to whatever it is that I never wanted to feel before. So, I think we're born to be able to experience everything. There might be things in our life that have caused us to shy away from certain things. The way that society perhaps talks about always being happy. We're not always meant to be happy. If that was the case, we'd be psycho. So, just allowing ourselves to understand that the ups and the downs, they're all important. Feeling happy and joyful is as important as feeling fear and anxiety. And also, I think more recently for me, it's really interesting because emotions are sensations. It's a combination of mind and body working together to tell you that you're feeling something. But it's been a real exploration for me recently to understand what it is about fear that doesn't feel so good for me. Like, do I not like feeling the knot in my stomach? Or is it like the knot in my throat? Or is it the shortening of breath? Or is it the rising of body temperature? What is it about it that doesn't feel so good to feel? But I think, the yoga practice, and then as you start to explore it more, there are so many tools that you pick up along the way that are going to help you lean in versus numb out.
Yeah. And you also spoke a little bit about how when you got into yoga and you saw the magic started to happen, you also became addicted to that a little bit. And that can also be problematic
Yeah.
for some people because you just switch out one form of craving and attachment for another. So how do you find balance for yourself
That's
in
a
that?
really
Because
great question.
I think that can happen in Ashtanga a lot, where you just like feel so good and you just get the sensation is addictive.
Yeah, well, I'm a hand balancer as well, so I'll tell you this, balance isn't something that's easy to come by. I mean, you spend all day long, your body spends all day long chasing a sense of balance. Every hormone that's released into your system, everything that you experience is about homeostasis. And it's not a place that you get to stay in. You get to experience a moment of it, and then you're back to being imbalanced. So I won't lie and sit here and tell you that I figured it out. Even in terms of my own life and my own career, I'm still chasing, a better feeling in terms of finding balance. But that's not saying that it's not worth going after. I'm surprised, quite frankly, that I haven't injured myself badly, because I am somebody that pushes in all corners of my life, and it's taken me a long time. I've been practicing for a decade now, and I think it's only been in the last couple of years that I've allowed myself to slow down. But yeah, it's absolutely possible to kind of start to just switch out the addiction, not really address the problem or the underlying thing that actually causes you to be in that state, but just switch it out for something else. And just because it's yoga doesn't mean it's better. So I think for me, the exploration of understanding why is it the way that I am has been really key to being able to soften a little bit, be a little bit more compassionate. I remember there used to be a time when people used to keep telling me that I'm really angry. Even when I practice with a lot of anger. And I feel like just addressing the why behind the behavior, not just stopping the behavior, but understanding why that was happening in the first place, is kind of allowing me to kind of see what was behind it, but then also making sure that I don't relapse, and I don't just take that addiction and place it somewhere else, because that's not what you want to do. You want to address what's going on.
Right. And I guess the switch comes when it doesn't become about feeling good, but it becomes about something else, just being present to the sensation, whatever that is in that moment.
Yeah. I think you develop that sense of presence, and you kind of come up with ways in which you can lean in and feel safe about leaning in. Part of why we don't address things is because we don't know how intense it's going to feel to allow the feelings in. Vulnerability is hard, but it's the only way to be in the world. You can't connect with anyone or anything if you're not vulnerable. So there are lots of ways that we can sort of divert our attention elsewhere and kind of do the work later, which is never. But I think as you're on this path of yoga and all the tools that you get to experience, it's all about opening you back up. Dropping the labels, dropping the excuses, dropping all the stories around the stuff, and just feel everything.
So I'm curious to know, with the kind of experiences that you've had and the personal journey you've been on to now, today, with having 7 years of teaching experience, what is the primary intention with which you go into a class? What is it that you want to give people, and how do your own experiences play into that?
I'm not going to say I want to heal people. I'll definitely say that teaching has been a huge part of me being able to speak my truth, because that's a lot of what I do in my classes. My classes sound a little bit like sermons, but I'm mostly talking to myself and hearing the things that I need to hear from myself. Hopefully they help other people in the room too, because I feel like the day that I started to be able to share my story and step a little bit more into my own authenticity, it was like I was giving my students permission to do the same. You know, when I walk into a room, I want to give people the permission to just drop the facade and lean into everything, because that is the medicine. That really is the medicine. You're using the postures to study who you are. The postures are not about Instagram fame or likability or being an intermediate yogi just because you can do some fancy stuff. It's about being able to see clearly who you are in all the different situations that you've put yourself into. And these shapes are not easy to make. Really hard to breathe in, contortion type shapes, opening up parts of the body that have been extremely closed, bringing up so much stuff. This yoga stuff is for courageous people. And I really, really hope that what I do when I walk into a room is hold space for people to feel their courage.
Beautiful. Yeah. So, like I was saying at the beginning, I find it really interesting, like the way you're balancing this kind of genuine interest in the tradition, in like an authentic expression, but also with this idea of like being playful, making it suited to the person who's coming into the practice wherever they are at that moment. So yeah, I want to just explore like what that approach is like. How do you maintain one foot in both these things?
So I've always loved teaching hard stuff.
Right.
I like being able to break things down and make things accessible. Because I think there was a moment for me when the switch happened, when I felt like this yoga thing is working, is that I wasn't running away from difficult. I wanted to explore difficult. And it was like, that only came from the practice. That change and shift in my mind only came from the practice. Suddenly, climbing a mountain wasn't just about looking at the height and saying, I can't do this. It was about, how can I do it? And I think that is life-changing. And I've always been in love with breaking things down that people say they cannot do and watch them be able to do the things that they've convinced themselves they can't. Whether it's like pushing their own boundaries, whether it's, disproving beliefs that they have about themselves. It's just seeing people grow in that way on the mat. I think it just changes their perception of who they are off the mat. So, and also about like doing hard stuff, which is what life is about. We don't run away from hard situations. We learn how to embrace them. And when you allow yourself to go through discomfort with grace, you get to grow. And I think you have to have a little bit of fun with it, because that's the way you learn. As adults, we take everything a little bit, too seriously.
Definitely.
If the hard stuff is very serious, and it can be, then it just becomes that much more intimidating to try. I think that's the way children approach things. They play, they drop their expectations, and they just explore. And if we can teach adults how to be like children, I think it would be life-changing for anybody that came into the room and decided to just have a try.
So, looking forward, how do you see yourself teaching in the future? In the sense of, do you feel like there's something in the yoga community that is missing that you'd like to bring to the table? Because I know that's something you think about, this kind of well-rounded approach. So yeah, looking forward, what are your plans? What are your intentions?
So I have a couple of things. One comes from my own journey of kind of hitting a ceiling in terms of, as a vinyasa practitioner. That's kind of where, after hot yoga, I kind of went into vinyasa. And I kind of hit a ceiling because I just found that it wasn't giving me what I needed. in terms of postures, pushing my practice, my physical practice, but then also my spiritual practice wasn't getting addressed. I just felt like my practice kind of stopped moving in a singular line and started going sideways. And I started to explore calisthenics. I realized that there was a whole world of hand balancing that I could kind of look at. I started to play and work with Ido Portal students and learn movement and locomotion. And I still kind of love doing that kind of stuff. Like I do a lot of mobility, a lot of gymnastics, ring work. And I find that everything kind of, ebbs and flows together. I think the more ways that you can kind of find and explore to move the body, the more open it stays, the more you'll find complementary movements, the more you'll find your body just changing organically and responding really well even to your yoga practice. And I've always been that kind of student. I love exploring, and I think I'll continue to do that for the rest of my life. Because I know there are certain parts of my practice that will probably fall away, and I'll probably pick up others as I go. Chanting has been a big part of my practice over the last, I'd say, year or so. Diving a little bit deeper into the philosophy side of yoga as well has been of huge interest to me, which I do a lot of as well. So I know there are some parts that will fall away, other parts that will get picked up. And this is why we love the practice, because it's just a never-ending journey of learning and growing. So I think, and then my students get to go along on the journey with me because I love to share this stuff. It's how I learn. I like to bring people along on the journey that I'm on and have them grow with me. Because I think, for me, understanding that the physicality is one bit that I absolutely love, that I will constantly use, but then there is so much more as a human being that I want to explore. So I think my students will hopefully come on the ride and grow with me.
Wonderful. Yeah. I think that's all I wanted to ask you today. This was, just a lovely conversation. Thank you so much,
Thanks so
Neha.
much. Thanks so much, Anand.